so that if both parents are Jewish, right? Born Jewish, then you're allowed to sit on a Dina Nefashis case. Or actually, if the mother is Jewish. Well, there's a machlaikas because Taisva says if the father was Jewish. Okay, if you look at the first ger danas chavero and then le'inyan chalitza aji avi ve'imam Yisrael, and he says Taisva says that since we consider a person a kohen just based on the father, we should consider halachas kama v'kama. We should consider him a Jew based on the father. So it's some ambiguity, but a ger can't sit on a chalitza bezdin. The next page.
I was needing.
I know, but we managed to do a whole page. Okay. You got to know. That's all. All right. So we great. I'm doing. You're really sitting in my seat. I'm doing the dead people. We gratefully acknowledge the generosity of the many persons who have given of their worldly goods to support. What?
You gotta move your stuff.
So you want to sit here, Zev?
That's his usual. That's his Marcom company.
No, he's going to sit there.
No, this is the way we're.
He's not gonna be here for half a year.
Not here. I'm going to send it his place.
He's not gonna be here for half a
Whatever's
year.
happening, I'll try and find a spot.
Right.
I'll put it on the phone.
It's not necessary.
Okay. So before I was so rudely interrupted by the individual sitting in that seat, I was in the middle of acknowledging the contributions of the sponsors. A year of learning by the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Sora Toiva Bas Yisrael, Dove. Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona, Rachel Mata Bas Asher. Friends of Nina Moinister, Nechama Asna Bas Yitzchak Aron. Friends of Stephen Vigder, Simcha Melech Ben Meir Lev Halevi. Friends of Marzi Kurtz in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha. A month of learning by the children and grandchildren in honor of Vicky and Larry Fish, who are both alive. Rebecca, Lewis, and Susan Witansky in memory of Rebecca's uncle and Lewis's brother, Pesach, I believe, Ben Yosef. Carol and Josh Sanborn in memory of her mother, Yitta Bas Nachman Binyamin. Week of Learning, Sharon and Michael Glass in memory of her father, Shlomo Ben Yosef Cohen. Jack Gilman in memory of his father, Yitzchak Ben Avram Chaim. Evelyn and Isaac Blacher in memory of her father, Harav Yeshayahu Yitzchak Ben Harav Yisrael Yechiel Alevi. Day of Learning, today is the 17th. A Day of Learning by Sandra and Martin Fish in memory of her mother, Freda Bas Avram Moshe. Milton and Gail Miller in memory of his brother, Nachum Shimon ben Yaakov Shloimeh. Chana, that's it. That's it. Okay. When last we met, we at the bottom of Kuf Aleph Amid Beis. We had this situation where an individual named Shmuel ben Yehuda, Rav Shmuel ben Yehuda, was invited to be a fifth, or perhaps, according to one of the Meforshim, a sixth, to sit at the head table, so to speak, when there was a chalitza to be. And he said, I really can't be part of the Bezdin because I'm a ger. So the Gemara now in the top of Kuf Beis Amid Aleph goes into some of the qualifications of a Bezdin, when a ger can and when a ger cannot be on a Bezdin, okay? Ger done es chaveru dvar Torah. The Torah teaches that a convert to Judaism can sit on a Bezdin to judge another convert to Judaism, even over here in Dinei Nefashos, okay? And according to everybody, a ger can sit on a Bezdin for Dinei Mamanos, even if it is, even if the guy has been a Jew since Moshe. Okay, Shenemar, and we're going to learn psukim about a king, and we're going to analogize to the qualifications for a Bezdin from the king. Shenemar, the pasuk says, Sum tosim elecha melech, you should certainly appoint a king, asher yibchar Hashem elekecha boy, that God sort of chooses. In other words, God will participate. He'll have a navi and not tell you who the king should be, but the people have to willingly appoint him king. Mekerav achicha tasim elecha melech, from the midst, I guess, or of your people. So we learn from there that both parents have to be Jewish. Elecha hu deba'inan, mekerav achicha, so only those that you can put in authority over yourself have to be from both parents being Jewish. That's what we derive. So just as a king has the right to kill people, etc., so too a Bezdin that has the right to kill people, they have to both be Jewish parents. The judge has to have two Jewish parents, okay? So, aval, however, ger done as chaveru ger. But a ger can judge his fellow ger, again, even in Dinei Nefashos. Now, the im hoisa imo mi Yisrael, the Gemara here suggests that if only the mother is Jewish, but the father is a convert, Danafili Yisrael, such a person could sit on a Bezdin. Tosfos challenges that. Okay? Aval inyan chalitza. But when it comes to a chalitza case, Achitihu avi ve'imo me Yisrael, both parents have to be Jewish. So why do they include the father here? Because the pasuk says, Shenem nikra shemoi bi Yisrael, and a person is named by the father. Normally, we have a Ben Rivka in the Gemara once, but normally your name comes from your father's side, so that both parents in a chalitza case have to be Jewish. And Shmuel ben Yehuda, he and his father were both Gerim. Now, we're finished with Gerim, and we're getting into chalitza and some of the requirements. So I'll try as best I can to describe the chalitza shoe. If you can imagine our sandal, but add a heel to it, okay? And the entire sandal, it has a flat sole. The sides are bent up to become supports for the laces. And the heel is bent up and the side and the heel are sewn together. So it looks like a shoe, except it doesn't have an upper. And then a second piece of leather, a rectangular second piece of leather, is sewn to the heel portion of the foot. And it's not the same piece of leather, it's a second piece of leather. The shoe part has, according to one shot I saw, 3 black laces, and each of those has a knot, so it can't be completely removed from the shoe. Like you get a knot in your shoe, now it won't come through the eyelet, right? That's how it was made. And the upper has a white ritzua. a white strap, sort of like the ritzuas of our tefillin, but they're white. Okay. Oh, he has a picture. You want to pass around the picture? But they have the ritzua black on the top.
Black.
It's really supposed to be white.
White.
All right. In any event, if you can try and imagine that, because we're going to have a bunch of cases now. Now, what if it, and what the Gemara is basically going to deal with are deviations from that pattern. So I'll state up front that the chalitza shoe that is used halacha lamaisa incorporates every chumrah suggested in the Gemara plus every chumrah suggested in the Rishonim, so that nobody could challenge the chalitza. But as we will discover, it is really not, in terms of the etzem halacha, we do not need to go that far. All right, so we'll go on to the Gemara now. Omer Rava, Omer Rav Kahana, Omer Rav. So we have at least a 3-generational Messiah. Em Yavo Eliyahu. If Eliyahu were to suddenly appear, the Omer Cholzin b'Minal. We introduced the Minal. The Minal is more shoe-like than that sandal. And we're going to learn that the problem is, at least some Mina'alim have leather completely, like our shoes have a tongue, and the laces are above the tongue. So the laces aren't in contact with the guy's body, they're in contact with the tongue. If you made a Mina'al without a tongue, if you tore the tongue out of a real shoe, and the laces could touch the man's flesh, the material was thin enough or low enough, that then it would not be as a problem of a chatzitza. In reality, like when they do chalitza, they actually scrub the guy's foot with a brush. So there can't be even a single particle of dirt, which would be a chatzitza and would puzzle the chalitza. In any event, if Eliyahu showed up and he said, Cholzin b'Minal, you could do chalitza with Minal, Shoimrin lo, then I would believe him and I would be willing to use a Minal. Pardon me?
I said avada.
Okay. Not avada, keep listening. The ein Cholzin b'Sandel, but if he told me you can't use a sandal, which is what our chalitza shoe is based on, basically, the bottom is a sandal, okay? Ein shonim lo. I would not accept his psak. Why not? Shekvar nahagu ha'am b'sandal. Because now we're speaking now of 200 years after the temple was destroyed. And he says, in all this time, we've been doing it with a sandal. I'm not going to puzzle all those chalitzas that occurred in historically. So for us, halachas kama v'kama, it's an extra 2,000 years. Okay, I wouldn't accept it. So that was Rava. Rav Yosef has a little different. Rav Yosef Omer, Rav Kahana Omer Rav. They also has a Masorah going back to Rav Kahana and to Rav. Okay. Im Yovo Eliyahu Omer Ein Cholzin b'Minal. If he said you cannot use a Minal, Shaimin lo. So here we see if he says you can, according to Rava, the implication is that until he says so, you can't. Here he says, if he says you can't, so the implication is heretofore you could. So we have a stira between within the brisa. Ein cholzin mis sandal. If he says you can't use a sandal, ein shomnim lo, I wouldn't believe him. Shekvar nohogo ha'am b'sandal. Similarly, because since the beginning of time, we've been using a sandal. So we have a machlokes of what Rav Kahana said in the name of Rav between Rava and Rav Yosef. Okay, my benaihu, what's the difference between them? Ika benaihu, the difference between them is whether you can use mina'al lichatchila, whether you could use lichatchila, you could use a regular shoe, let's say, and cutting out the tongue. Or you have to go hunt up a chalitza shoe. That would be the difference between them. Ulamanda Aimer Afilu Lechatchila, according to Rabbi Yosef, it says you can use it even Lechatchila. What about the following brisa? Actually, our Mishnah, V'hatanan Cholzo Mina'al Chalitza Sakshera. The implication is if you use the Mina'al B'di'evet, it works. It doesn't say Choyleitz b'minal. It says if you did it with a minal, it's okay. Okay, did he ever aim? That implies yes, if the ever you accept the chalitza, lechatchila lo, but you can't. So the Gemara says this is one of those stylistic Mishnayos business where they try to keep language to make it easier to memorize. Who had dinner fila lechatchila? The actual halacha is you could use a minal even lechatchila. The ire. The boy lemisne seifa, and since later in the Mishnah we talk about an anpilia using a cloth, they translated sock. I think the better translation is a slipper, like we wear cloth, velvet slippers. Yeah.
The Steinsaltz had pictures of this too. And it actually was a soft
cloth thing.
Soft cloth.
But it didn't go up the leg. So no, it's more like a slipper.
And it did not have a
sole. Yeah, my wife has these socks that with like rubber on the bottom and she wears them. Anyway, a sock, a slipper. You get the picture of what we're talking about. If you would use a sock or slipper made out of some fabric, no good, okay? The afila di'evet, and even if you passed it off, well, she's already married, let's count it, di'evet, no. She violated her zika by remarrying because that was no good. Okay, Tananami reisha di'evet, so it keep the Mishnayos parallel. He implied b'di'evet in the reisha, although it is kosher lechatchila to use a minal. Okay, uminal lechatchila tanai, and the concept of using a minal is itself a machlokes tanaim d'sanya. We have a brisa. Omer Rabbi Yossi, pam achas halachti l'nitzivin. One time I went to visit somebody in a town of Nitzivin. Now over here, in this next story, there's not one monolithic text for the Gemara. And there is an alternate reading of this Gemara so that either Rav Yehuda ben Beseira is still alive, and he simply, in the fact that the man is old is a coincidence, or he was no longer alive, and the reason he sought out the old man is because he would be more likely to know it. So just for the record, I'd like to state that, okay? So Omer Rabbi Yossi says in the Brisa, Pam achas halachli l'nitziven, I went visiting in Nitziven, Motzasi zaken echad, I met an elderly man, V'amarti, and I said to him, Klumato Baki Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Are you are you familiar with Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira? Amali, hey, he said, absolutely. Ad shulchani hu todir. He eats or ate at my house frequently. I said to him, did you ever see him handle a Yavama ceremony? And he says, he says, back to me, I was present, I saw it a lot of times. And then I said to him, Mina'al obesandel. So I want to get this straight. Did he use a minal or did he use a sandal? Omar Li, he said back to me, V'chi cholzim b'minal. Where do you come off thinking you can do it with a minal? Okay, the Torah Imra na'alo, velo min na'alo. The Torah uses a lashon without the mem, and the object with the mem is not what the Torah is referring to. Okay, na'alo, his na'al, and the lo min na'alo, not his na'al, min na'al. So amarti lo, I said back to him in Cain. Ma Rabbi Meir Leimer. What do you do with the memra that Rabbi Meir said? Chalza mina'al chalza okshera. It's perfectly kosher. Rabbi Yaakov Aimer Mishmai, and Rabbi Yaakov adds in Rabbi Meir's name chalzim b'mina'al lechatchila. You can do it lechatchila. So we said the purpose of bringing this is to show there's a machlokes whether you can or can't use a minal. According to the Saba, the elderly sage, he says no, and according to Reb Meir, he says yes. Okay, Umanda omer lechatchila lo my timer. One who says you cannot use a minal, what's his problem? If you say that the part of the minal that I'm calling a tongue is intervenes, okay, that's on the guy's foot. The kurasa me'al de ma'al, and we have to, and therefore the strap is on this leather tongue object, and the leather tongue object is on the foot. Okay, v'hatayra amra me'al v'lo me'al de me'al, and the Torah says the strap has to be in contact with the flesh, not in contact with something else that's in contact with the flesh. If that's your problem, I feel it to be evidnami low. That can't be the problem. We can't be talking about an object that's got a complete leather upper and the straps don't contact the flesh, because then the evidence would be no good. So that's a straw man that gets thrown out. Okay, so why would those who say you can't use a mina'al lichatchila, why would they say that? Gezeru v'shum mina'al me roifot. We say you can't use a mina'al because, and I don't understand this, so don't ask. You can't use a mina'al because it might be broken or torn, okay? And then it would not even be good lechatchila, so we usher it, we make a gezerah. So that's the Gemara's answer. Inami, or another possibility, mishum chatzi minal. Again, there were also shoes that are analogous to our shoes. They only covered the heel and the body of the foot, but not the calf. There were other objects that were more like our boots that covered the calf, like our chalitza shoe does. So one of the problems with, I guess the standard minal did not have the part on the calf, and you might make a mistake and use a unboot-like minal, and that's why they make the gezerah. Okay, so again, but if it's got the straps touching the foot, they'd let it go. So this is the beginning of our understanding that the Gemara is much more lenient than the modern halacha. Omar, now we're going to go and describe this some more. Okay, Omar Rav says, Elav the chamise, the chavivi, the chalatz misandal, the isblo shinsin. If I did not watch my uncle, Rav Chia, supervise a chalitza with a sandal with the straps. Now we're starting to get into the straps. Ana lo haviet chalitzana ela b'sandal taya. I would have said you have to use an Arabian sandal. So it's obviously a different style. The hadak tve, which straps more tightly to the foot than the Jewish sandals did. Okay, maybe it has more straps. Maybe it has this upper with straps, so it's more difficult. I don't know. I didn't see a picture of it anywhere. Vahadinan, and with regarding our sandal, afalgaf de isbe chumrata, even though it does have the knot in the lace or ritzua to keep it from coming through the holes in the, so it won't completely detach from the body of the sandal. Katrin and Bay Misna, we do add this long strap that's on the upper, the white strap I was talking about. Ki heichi is have chalitza ma'al yasa, so that the chalitza can be done in the best possible way, or me'alia could mean that she unties the upper on the calf. Okay? Now, there's a mnemonic here, Simin Hatras Yavama sandal, that the woman has to untie or loosen or remove the sandal. Omer Rav Yehuda Omer Rav. We have a brisa. Hataras Yavama Lashuk, the Shemitas Rov Ha'akav. The removal, the release, the untying by the Yavama of the foot of the thing so she can become married to anybody she likes is based on taking off the thing from his heel. Okay, and we have no idea what that means. They'll try and get into it. Meisve, you want to?
No, I was simply going to say, in other words, the idea of showing the majority of the heel.
Right, but they're going to challenge that. So again, I prefer to be, because I don't know exactly what it's talking about. Neither does the Gemara, so I thought I'd leave it a little ambiguous. Meisve, we want to challenge that notion. Haturu ritzuos minal sandal. What? The sandal. Okay. If the upper strap of a mena'al or a sandal it loosens, okay? Oh, sheshamait rov haregel, or if in other words, it loosened by itself. It wasn't well tightened. Neither he nor she untied it. It just loosened by itself, like I do every time I come to shul. My shoelace is untied, right on my right foot. Chalitz psula. Sheshamet rov haregel, or if the man loosens it so that it's mostly loosened above his foot. Again, I don't know if that means the whole upper and part of the horizontal part or just most of the horizontal part. I don't know. Chalitza psula, it ain't any good. Taima, what's the problem? The shamathu, that he or the world did the loosening. Okay? Ha shamat he, but she has to. But the implication is he did the loosening or the majority of loosening, and then she took it partly or mostly off. Okay, but the shamat he. But if she does the loosening and removal, and it doesn't have to be the whole shebang, chalitza sekshera, it's okay. Rov haregel ein. So obviously, most of the foot from this we would say would be fine. Rov ha'ekev, but just most of the heel, but not most of the whole foot. Low, that would be no good. Now again, in modern, in terms of the halacha, we go lechumra. She takes the whole thing off, and she actually throws it at least daled amos away from him. Okay, so the answer is low. That's not what this Akev meant. Hainu Rav HaRegel, Hainu Rav HaEkev. You can't make a distinction between what we translate as heel and what we translate as foot. It's this, they mean the same thing. Va'amai korele Rav HaRegel. Why did they use the lashon regel in one place? Okay. The kula chalya the ka'ira alei the chis, that the weight of the body is on the leg and the weight of the leg is on the heel. So the Gemara is saying that the heel is the most functional part of the foot, and therefore it used the words regel and foot interchangeably. Okay. Messiah Leila Rav Yana. That brisa that we just read, it backs up the statement of Rav Yanai to Omer Rav Yanai, Ben shehitir hu ushmatahi, whether he loosens the straps, unties the straps, and she takes off the shoe. Ben shehitira he ushamat hu, or whether she does the untying and he does the taking off. Either way, chalitza psula, that chalitza didn't happen. It's a non-chalitza. It didn't work. Ad shehitir he the sashmit he. She has to do the untying and she has to do the taking off. That's so we're going back in this business of most of the foot, not the foot, he, she, backs up Rabbi Yanai, who says she has to do the whole thing or no deal. Boy, Rabbi Yanai. So we mentioned Rabbi Yanai, we're going to do some other Yavama issues for Rabbi Yanai. Now, we talked about she has to untie the shoe and she has to take off the shoe. So in normal world, untying the shoe means loosening the knot or loosening the bow, opening up the shoe, loosening the laces so you can remove the shoe. But what if she did it a different way? Okay? Boy, Rav Yanai, karasu mahu. What if she simply yanked the shoe off with force, not untying it? Okay? In other words, she didn't loosen it first. Sometimes when you get home and you kick off your shoes without loosening the laces, right? What if she yanked this thing now? It goes all the way up his calf. I mean, it's got to be, he's going to get abraded and he's going to be in pain. But okay, but he said he didn't take her. I could see it. No, okay. What happens if that's all she does? Oh, she sarafta homahu. Or what if she takes a cigarette lighter? I mean, I didn't have cigarette lighters, but she burns the lace so it comes untied. Okay, what's the deal? Galuye kara be'inan. Is it simply that we require that the thing be off his foot? And here she managed to get it off his foot by tearing it off or by burning the straps and then taking it off. And we have that. Dilma chalitza ba'inan, or maybe the ikar is not bearing his foot, but it's taking the shoe or the off his foot, the leka, in a normal manner, because she burned the ritzua, and we didn't have that. Okay, so the answer is teku. We don't know. So the next time you do chalitza, I would take a cigarette lighter and have her burn the ritzua and see what they say.
I would take palm candle.
Okay. Boy mine Rav Nechemia me Rava. So Rav Nechemia asks a shaila of Rava. Now here, they often wore sandals, if you can imagine, are fairly rough on the foot because you could get abraded. So they had an analog to our socks. I'm going to use the term a shoe liner. And those shoe liners could have been made from cloth like our socks, or they could have been thin, supple leather. Okay, we're going to encounter thin, supple leather in a little bit again. But what happens if the yavam has a sock on or this leather shoe liner on between the sandal and his foot? Okay? Shnei mina'alim ze al gav ze mahu. What happens if he's got this liner in the sandal? Hey, Hidami, what are we talking about? If the lady took off the outer shoe, but the sock liner or the leather shoe liner remains on him, you have to take it off his foot. Not take off something that's on something else. So that would be that can't be the question, right? Lo tzricha. We would only need to ask our question if we're not talking about another thing inside the sandal. We're talking about, remember I told you that the upper is sewn to the lower. So the word me'al could mean above as well as upon. If she lo tzricha, the only reason we would have this question is the karaste la ilyai, she tore off the calf portion of the sandal, v'shalafte letachtai, and then removed the bottom half, the part on the foot, in the normal manner. Okay, v'koi aloi, or she tore the stitches between the upper and the lower, and then only removed the lower, leaving the upper on his leg. Okay, what would be the halacha then? Chalitza ve'inan, do we require removal of the whole thing? Removal of the shoe part. Okay, the part covering his regel. V'ha'ika, and she did do that. Or do we require exposing the whole lower extremity? I'm going to translate it that way. V'leka, and there his calf is still covered, so it didn't happen. Turn the page. Okay. So going back to the first explanation, do people actually wear leather shoe liners? Do people actually put shoes on top of shoes? The Gemara is just querying how could you even have that hypothesis? Is that a normal thing to do? Absolutely. The Chazia Rabbanan l'Rav Yehuda the nafek mechamisha zuze muke l'shuka. Rav Yehuda had issues with circulation or something with his feet. He had very problematic feet, so he would wear multiple layers of coverings to protect his feet from walking in the road or on pebbles and stuff. Okay, and the Gemara actually says 5, whether that's literal or a guzma, I don't know. Okay, now but we did introduce Rabbi Yehuda here, so we're going to talk about Rabbi Yehuda. Omer Rabbi Yehuda, Omer Rav. Now, here is the case. Remember, in those days, people married very young girls. We would consider them children. And even though they're the man's wife, they're still a kid, and she could play. So you can imagine a situation where the man dies, she's 7 or 8 years old. She's playing with her dead husband's surviving brothers. And in the course of play, she yanks one of their shoes off. Okay, one could imagine such an instance. Omer Rav Yehuda, Omer Rav, Yavama shehegdila ben ha'achim, the Yavama, who was a little girl growing up in the house of the deceased husband, muteres lenase la'acher min ha'achim, she can do yibum with one of the brothers, okay? We don't investigate her play patterns. We just let them do yibum if he wants to. The enchoshishin shema cholza minal le'echad mehem, and we don't worry that at some point in the play after the husband died, but because you have to wait at least 3 months, sometime in that interim, she accidentally yanks off or intentionally yanks off one of the shoes of her brother and of one of the men to whom she has a zika. We're going to get there. But you got it right. Okay. Taima daloch hazinan. Number one possibility, there weren't 3 adult males watching while she was playing with her brother, with her yavam or one of the yavamas. But if you say the reason was there were not 3 adults supervising the play group, then what happens if there were 3 adults supervising the play group and they saw her yank off the shoe? They might be concerned, and we would say that's a chalitza, and she's now usher to all those men and would have to marry in the shul. V'hatanya, we have a brisa that says, Ben sheniskaven hu v'lo sheniskavna he. If he has the intent of chalitza, but she doesn't have it explained to her what's going on, and she just take off his shoe. Okay, I'll take off his shoe. It wouldn't be a good chalitza. Or ben sheniskavna he. Maybe she knows what's going on. V'lo niskaven hu. But he isn't willing or hasn't had it explained to him. Okay, chalitza psula, it's no good. That's your point, Mel. Okay. Ad sheyiskavenu shneihem kiechad. They both have to have the correct intentions simultaneously. Okay, he can't, like, you could imagine it if he passes out halfway through the process, so he's not having kavanah, then it would puzzle the chalitza. So even if she was playing with the brother-in-law, the Zika guy, and yanked off his shoe, nishka ferlach, okay? But what? They have to be, yeah.
The girl's under 12 and a half.
And he's under 12 and a half, yeah. She's under 12 and a half, and he's under, she's under 12 and a day, and he's under 13 and a day. You would have to wait till he is 13 and a day. She can still be a minor. If she's 7 and he's 12, they have to wait a year. All right? Okay. And the reason is, you would say, well, why doesn't she need das? Because it wasn't a Torah marriage anyway. It was only with the Rabbanan. So the Rabbanan let her do it. Okay? We don't have to worry about her being an adult, because on a Torah level, normally they would, if it was the father, it would be a Torah marriage. But more often than not, these marriages took place because the father died and the family couldn't handle all the children. So they farmed the girls out. And the mother and brother did that, not the father. So in any event, he has to be of age. Okay? So, Hachi Kamar. So here's what Rev Yehuda was talking about. Okay? Afal Gaf the Chazinan. Let's say that the little girl and the 13-year-old boy actually set up a situation, but not the 12-year-old boy, actually set up a situation, like kids, let's play getting married, and the girl puts on a shmata to look like a veil. Maybe they were playing at chalitza, okay? And he says, Afal Gaf the Chazinan, even though there were actually the 3 men sitting there, they're like, they think this is cute, and they let the kids play, right? Ein Choshishin Shema Kavanoi. we do not concern, even though the kids know that they're playing at chalitza, we don't call that the kavana of a chalitza. Okay, now that's one way of analyzing what that story was. Ikadamri, there's another way. Time of the Lochazinin, the reason why Reb Yehuda is not worried is Lochazinin. There were no 3 adults there. Okay. But if there were 3 adults, then we might be concerned. The Tana boy kavana, and when the Brisa says that both parties need kavana, hani milet ish to alma, that we're talking where, okay, if you do a kosher chalitza, where there is all the proper kavana and a real bezdin, etc., etc., the net effect is twofold. One, it breaks the zika, and therefore marrying one of the brothers of her dead husband would be an erva. That's part one. And part two, she now may go and marry anybody else. So if you had this play chalitza, Rav Yehuda is pondering, maybe the play chalitza, if there's some kavana, breaks the zika, and therefore none of those boys or men can marry her. But it's not a kosher chalitza to the extent that it would allow her to marry someone else. Hani milita alma. That's, you need a kosher chalitza to turn her over to the world. Ava la'achin mifalsa. But to marry one of the brothers-in-law, she cannot do based on this maybe chalitza, this play chalitza. And that might have been what Rav Yehuda was worried about. Now we're getting to other materials. Now, we said that the whole thing is leather, and they actually use a thin strip of leather to do the sewing, and they actually use leather ritzuos for the straps, okay? Omer Rav Yehuda, Omer Rav, sandal hatafur b'pishtan. If the stitching is made out of linen, ein cholzin bo, we cannot use that object for chalitza, shenemar, ve'en alech tachash. You are wearing, or I'm putting on shoes on you made out of tachash. Now you remember that in the Mishkan, they used the hides of an animal called the tachash, which according to the Meforshim were very beautiful, multicolored. One of the Rishonim says it was a leopard. The spots are the colors. Okay, so that pasuk says that the shoe has to be tachash. So do I have to go back into the midbar every time I do a chalitza and dig up a tachash? I don't even know how to translate it. How am I going to ever do a chalitza? What?
But that animal was only around.
So that's the point. So how can you ever have a kosher chalitza if you interpret the pasuk literally? You have to use tachash. Okay. The aim at tachash aim. So maybe you have to only use a tachash. Midei achrina lo. You can't use anything else. So apparently they believed there were still tachashes. It's not, yeah.
Koren Steinzelt suggests tachash here should be understood as a kind of animal leather. It suggests perhaps even from the sea, like a narwhal, or some suggest, other Rishonim suggest like even giraffe.
Yeah, okay, but which is again the multicolored hide.
Right.
But the point is, we would first have to decide what a tachash is, and then we'd have to find one, and then we'd have to make shoes out of it. By that time, they're both old. All right? So, the hypothesis here is you can't use anything else. So, na'al, riba. that pasuk has the word na'al in it more than once. So if you erased one of the na'als, the pasuk would still read. So that na'al is available as a riboy, and we're in marba riboy, we're marba any kind of leather, not simply nachash leather. So the Gemara says, why only leather? Na'al riba. If you're saying that the extra na'al includes other shoe materials besides nachash hide, afilu kol mile nami, why not use anything? A wooden shoe, a cloth shoe, a metal shoe. Why is it only leather? So the Gemara says, Imkain. If you say that you include anything in the whole world that you could fashion a foot covering out of, tachash mai ahanile. Why is the word tachash there to begin with? So the riboy gets limited only to materials that have some analogy to the tachash hide, which would mean only other kinds of leather. Okay, so that's the end of that. Boy, mine Rabbi Eliezer me Rav. Rabbi Eliezer asks Rav, what if the thing is not entirely leather? What if you made the shoe part out of leather, but instead of using leather ritzuos, you would take wool and weave ritzuos like our shoelaces are cotton, right? They're woven out of or dacron or whatever they are. Whatever. Boy minei Rav Eliezer may Rav shall or the taresi oisav shall say or mahu. What if the body of the shoe is leather and the straps are made of animal hair, wool or mohair or cashmere, something like that? Can you use that shoe? Amalei, he replies, the pasuk says, Malo karinin be va'en alech tachash. You have to use a tachash. Now, every mammal has some hair on its leather hide. So the analogy to tachash works, and as a matter of fact, it's the hair that has the colors. So therefore he's saying if it's wool or mohair or cashmere or vicuña, if it's the hair of an animal and you wove the ritzuos, he suggests that would be fine. So what if that's the case? Kulo shall say nami. What would be the deal if I wove wool socks and use them to do the chalitza? You could cut holes in it to put the straps. You could fashion the whole thing out of wool. Okay, what would be the deal? So the Gemara says that the Hebrew language or the Aramaic language has words for sock-like structures that are shoe-like as well. Like we have sneakers. Okay, now they're leather, but they once were made of canvas. So people didn't go into the shoe store and say, I want a shoe. They went into the shoe store and said, I want a sneaker. And the guy knew to dig out the canvas shoes, not the leather shoes. So the Gemara says, who korka makre, an object made fully out of fabric that goes on the foot, that's not a sock or not a slipper, but it's an outdoor object, that's called a karka. It's not called a shoe or a sandal. So if that implication is no. Okay, Amar le Rav Kahana l'Shmuel. So Rav Kahana asks Shmuel, Mimai dahai cholotza na'alo mi'al raglo mishlafu. How do we know that she does chalza? She chalzas with his shoe from his foot, means take off. And now we're going to go through several examples where the shoresh of chalatz is used other than to remove. Okay, Dixiv, we have a pasuk. The chiltzu es ha'avonim me'al vehem hanega. Here he's saying first that reason we call it take off or take out or remove is because when it comes to tzaras in a building, the pasuk uses the word chiltzu, take the offending stones out of the structure. That's how we know that chalza means to take off or remove. Ema zaruzehu, but maybe it means prepare. Okay, diksiv, we have another pasuk. Hacholzu me'itechem anashim litzava. Prepare yourselves to go out to the army. So that doesn't mean remove yourself. You would love to get a what's it called? A D. What was that called? 4D, whatever it was called. Deferment. Deferment. Right. But it doesn't mean that. It means prepare to go out to the army and put your boots on, you could say it means, not off. Hasam nami shalufe me besa le krava. We could twist that pasuk a little and say, go out of your house to go into the army. So they wiggle out of that one. Okay. But here it means support, provide provisions for a poor person who is in poverty. Okay, so therefore it means give him stuff, not take away from him. B'schar anyo yalchotzo me dina shel Gehenna. No, you could twist that pasuk too. You will be removed, add the words, from having to go to hell. Go back to the pasuk if you help the poor person in his poverty. So that's okay. Ela hadiksiv chayna malach Hashem saviv l'reya v'yichaltzem. There is a pasuk that the angel, I think you gotta pluralize that, but in any event, the angel or angels of Hashem camp around the people who fear God, and they yichaltzem, they provision him, support him. So there again, it might mean that by analogy, put on, not take off the shoe. Again, if you fear God, this angel takes away, removes the potential of your going to Gehenna. So that's again how they answer. Ella hadiksiv, he tries again. What about this pasuk? This gets a little more difficult. Your bones will be yechalets. I have to hear it has to mean strengthened. It can't mean removed, because if you removed your bones, you wouldn't be a person anymore. Okay? Omer Rav Elazar, zu me'ula she ba-barachos. That is, and he said that's the best bracha you should possibly get. Okay, so it can't mean take out your bones. It's got to be fortify your bones. It's vitamin D. Okay, Amar Rava, he suggests it means zeruze garment, that it means to strengthen the bones. So therefore, chalitza means like strengthen his foot by putting the shoe on it. Okay, and yes, mashma hachi umashma hachi. This word can be used in two contexts, and you determine from the context what it means. We have that in Psachim, where we say or Arba Yom, and it means the night. Right. It doesn't mean the morning. Okay? Bahachi is salkadaitach zaruzehu. And if you're telling me over here, it means prepare him. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Imkain, let's look at the context. Lichtav Rachmana v'chol na'alo b'ragloi. If you're saying it means to put his shoe on, it would say put his shoe on his foot. It wouldn't say take it off. Okay? If it said on his foot, hava minu biragav, yeah, put it on. Bishuke lo, but take it off not. However, the pasuk says, "Kasav Rachmana may al ragloi," from on his foot. So from on his foot, the afilu bishuko, even if she puts it on his leg portion, okay, it would be valid. So how do we? That would also mean al, therefore meaning above. So how do we bottom line mean take it off? So if we're talking about put it on and the al is some tricky reference to the upper portion of the boot, imkain lichtav rachmana me al rabbi ma al raglav. God knows how to write. Let him write. Put it on his foot. Okay. My may al raglav. What does the Torah mean when it says may al raglav? Shma mina mishlafhu. That there is no way of misinterpreting it. Chalitza means take off. Okay. There was a little discourse that has the word chalitza in it, and that's the only reason it's here. Okay, Amar Leha Humina the Reb Gamliel, he used to have chats with a min. Amar the Chalatz le Rabbe Minei. You Jewish people are a nation that God did chalitza with you. He took away the Beis HaMikdash. So he did chalitza with you, and he's no longer your God. He broke the zika between Klal Yisrael and Shemayim. Dichsiv, and I can prove it from a pasuk. V'tzaynam ubevakram yelchu ubakesh es Hashem lo yimotze mitzau. With their herds and their flocks, they went looking for God and they couldn't find him. Cholatz mehem. He did chalitza with you. He took himself away from you. So that is the min's challenge to Rabban Gamliel. And again, the reason it's here is because of the word cholatz and also because of the Musar HaSkil. Amar lei, he replies to that fellow, Shaita, you idiot. Miksav cholatz lechem, does it say he did chalitza with them? Cholatz mayhem ksiv. He got chalitza from them. They gave him chalitza. Okay? V'elu yavama dechaltzu mino achin. So if one of the siblings of the dead man took her shoe off, if you did it backwards, okay? Midei mishasha ispe. Does that have any meaning? Does that have any value? So even if we interpret your pasuk the way you want to, we would have had to break down the Beis HaMikdash on our own to do chalitza from God. If God gets mad at us and and goes away from us, it's meaningless. He can and will be back. And that's the Musar HaSkil that the Gemara wants us to know, and that's why it's here, especially in the middle of chalitza, which they considered sort of sad because he didn't do Yibum except for Reb Zera, who says he should. So therefore the Gemara puts in like a little lightener in the middle of this material. Uba'an folya, ba'an pilya chalitza sula. If you used a sock-like object, because we don't know yet whether it's leather or wool. Okay, the chalitza is no good. Lememra, what the Mishnah is trying to tell us is the amfalia lav manalhu. That no matter how you slice it, a sock is a sock and a shoe is a shoe. They're not synonyms, okay? The Tananami, and we can prove that from other Mishnayos. We have a Mishnah regarding the Gizbor in the Bedek Abayis. Ein Tyrem Nichnas Lo Bepargod Chafus Veloba Anfalia. The man who's taking money out of the lishka may not walk into the heichal or the lishka, the room that the money is kept in, not with a fold in his garment, a hem. The theory being that he could have stuck coins in it and stolen. Velo ba'an filia, and not with a sock. Again, he's got not with even a sock on his foot. And if he can't even wear a cloth slipper or a cloth sock, halachas kama v'kama, he can't wear leather shoe or sandal. Lefisha ein nichnasin b'mina'ol v'sandal azara. You can't even walk into the courtyard with shoes or sandals. How could you even suggest you could walk into one of the buildings? Okay, so therefore, by making a distinction, by referring to both terms in independent clauses, rather than lumping it sandal and mina'al, that it's two different objects and neither the twain shall meet, except on a foot. Raminhu, I want to challenge that distinction. Echad minal v'sandal va'an filia lo yetayel b'hen. On Yom Kippur, you can't walk out of your house, and now it does link sock with shoe and sandal. Lo b'bayis l'bayis, not even from one room of your house to another. Lo b'mita l'mita, not even within a single room, literally from bed to bed. Okay, I'm sorry, lo b'bayis l'bayis, not outside from a building to a building. Lo b'mita l'mita, not even within the building. So here, socks are forbidden, apparently, so far, on Yom Kippur, just as leather shoes are. So how do we come to shul in our slippers? We'll get there. Omer Abaya says, the ispe ketite. This is a sock with pieces of other material. So some of the Rishonim want to suggest this, it's like soft leather, or that it's like some sneakers have partial leather. So these objects are not simply your bombas that you overpaid for. These are things that are with bombas are $20 a pair.
What's
a brand of sock.
Oh.
What? And they give a pair to homeless people for every pair someone buys. So I buy bombas because I feel good about overpaying. Okay, the ispe, because he said these have pieces either of fabric or of leather, whatever it is, or mishum ta'anug. And the reason you can't wear them is not that they're usher atzem themselves, but that they're super comfortable. And you're not doing the afflict yourself of Yom Kippur. These are so comfortable and so pleasant to wear that they violate the spirit of Yom Kippur, and that's why you can't wear them. And that refutes that socks and shoes are the same. Okay, Omelei Rava, so Rava tries again. Omishum tanug below mena'al b'yom kippurim mi asire? Is it that you can't wear shoes or these objects on your foot, these cloth or partial leather objects on your foot, because of pleasure equals their shoes, that you don't have to make that equals their shoes. V'ho Rava bar Rav Huna korich sudra akarya upnafik. Rava bar Rav Huna, who didn't want to walk in totally bare feet the distance from where he lived to where they were going to daven on Yom Kippur, he wrapped rags around. He wrapped a kerchief or a towel around his foot, and he went out on Yom Kippur with it. So that's obviously more comfortable than walking on the pebbles barefoot. So Tanug is not the issue. Ella Omer Rava, he says, lo kasha, there's no difficulty. And birds struggle with figuring out what kind of sock, and it's got rags or it's got particles of leather. That's not what we're talking about. Lo kasha kan ba'anfalia shel or. This is sort of leather. I don't know how to explain it better than it's like leather leggings or a calf-high sock made entirely of soft leather. And maybe that's what you put a sandal on top of. But just because it's leather, you can't wear it on Yom Kippur. And Khan, but over here, when you're talking about the Beis Hamikdash and being mamish barefoot, there it's talking ba'an filia shel beged, about a wool sock. Okay? Hachinami mistabra, that makes sense. Te'i lo tema hachi, if you don't make that distinction. Kasha Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippurim, we would have a conflict between the brises we just mentioned about Yom Kippur and the following brisa about Yom Kippur. The Sanya, we have a brisa. Lo yatayel adam v'kur kegisin. So you can't walk around in shoe liners. That's the best way I can translate that. He calls them undershoes, but I think that shoe liners are better. Okay, inside even your own house. Avol mitayel hu ba'an filyon b'toich beso, but you could wear what we would refer to as socks or slippers. So there's a difference. So this brisa says you can walk around in socks or slippers in the house if they're not leather. And the previous brisa even said, mita lamita, within the house itself, you couldn't. Elalav, so what do we have to determine? Shmami, now we have to learn the following. Kan va'anfilia shel or, the forbidden ones are leather leggings or sock-like things made of thin, soft leather that could also be worn inside or shoes, so they're shoe liners. Kan va'anfilia shel beged. And the other brisa that allows it is talking about cloth. Shmami, no, that's the bottom line. Okay. Tanya Kavase de Rava. We have a brisa now that backs up Rava, who says leather no, cloth yes. Okay. And now we're coming back to Chalitza. Cholza mina'al hanifram shechayfa es reiv haregel. If she uses that torn mina'al, I vision that the stitching between the upper and the lower are broken or missing. I don't know how else it would be torn. What?
Split.
Yeah, so that's the upper and the lower. That's how I interpreted it. Okay. The sandal hanifchas shemekabel es reiv haregel. Or where it's actually the lower portion that has the damage, but nonetheless it's able to hold the majority of a foot. Okay, and I would guess meaning from the heel forward, not from the toe back, because of the use of akev earlier. Okay, mena'al shel sham v'shel siv, or if it's a wicker, like you have sandals woven from straw-like material, and sieve is the fluffy stuff that's on a date palm that before they had plastic foam, they used to wrap the esrog in. And now you could take that stuff and you could make fabric out of it. You could weave it if you made some kind of a foot covering from wicker or from this sieve stuff. They translated best. But bast does me as much good as sieve does. So I looked it up, and it's that stuff on a palm tree. Bekav ubekita, or if you use a wooden shoe, or you use a prosthetic appliance, someone that had a partial amputation, and he wears a prosthetic appliance, okay? Bemuk, or if it is even a felt, which isn't woven, it's just hair and wool and stuff pressed together till it holds its shape, but it is not, and maybe there's some kind of a congealing agent, glue or something in there, but it is not woven. The semichas haraglayim, or with a foot brace or a foot cover. When in those days, if you say did not have the use of your legs, you couldn't buy an electric scooter, but you would be dragging yourself along. So they would wear a rather heavy thing on their foot to protect it from getting abraded when he was dragging along. Okay, so or it could mean like a brace, but I think it means the former. That seems to me to fit the context. But on philia, shall or leather leggings, the choletzes min hagoro, or you do a godoil, I'm sorry, or the girl takes the shoe from an adult, and you have to turn the page, otherwise we're in the middle of a sentence. Ben omed, ben yoshev, ben muta, whether he's standing or sitting or leaning on something. V'choletzes min hasuma, or the guy is blind. And you have to understand here that since we said someone on the Bezdin can't be blind because he has to see the spitting, you might have a havamina that a blind guy can't see her spit. He wouldn't be kosher to do chalitza. He would have to do yibum, or his brother would have to do the chalitza. That's a way out there havamina, but somebody could come up with it. Chalitza sekshera, using any kind of a foot-related object, even a non-shoe thing, no matter what position the dude is in, as long as he's an adult, even if he's blind, the chalitza is kosher. Avo minao hanifram she'en chayfa es roiv haregel. But if the mena'al is damaged to the extent that it doesn't cover the majority of the fellow's foot, or the sandal hanifchas, or a sandal that's broken, she'enu mina'al, the kabel is rov haregel, it doesn't cover the majority of his foot. And again, I would suggest from the heel forward. Oh, v'smichas hayodayim, or sometimes, I don't know if you ever saw in New York City, these guys who would be or claim to be legless, and they're on like a little wheeled platform and they're sitting on it and they move along with their hands. They navigate with their hands. So these would be heavy leather glove-like objects that you use to protect your hand when you're doing that. So since we said earlier, you could use this non-shoe, glove-like object that protect your feet from damage, and that would be kosher. So lest you have a havamina that you could stick, they look similar, stick one of these hand jobs onto the foot and do chalitza, okay? Va'anfilia shall beg it, or you use the cloth stock, okay? V'chaletzes min katan, or you do chalitza where the man is not yet 13 and a day, chalitza psula. All of those cases, the chalitza is invalid, and you will have the pleasure of Rabbi Green tomorrow and for the rest of the week, and you won't have to put up with me. Have a good Erev Shabbos.
Move in while you're standing. If you move the extender there.
Hey, give him his phone.
Phone and extender.
I'll give him his phone.